Atheist Nomads, episode 350. Doubts, changes, and typhoid Mary pastors.
The podcast you're about to listen to includes cursing and talking about hoo-haws. Please be advised.
Welcome to another episode of Atheist Nomads. I am Dustin, and joining me is Lauren.
Hello.
And this is episode 350. This is a big number once again. It's not quite divisible by 100, but it's halfway to being divisible by 100 again.
Okay, it's
That
divisible
was
by 50.
Super awkward.
Super awkward fun times.
And, we are not going 350 minutes. The 300-minute live stream for episode 300 was the last time we're going to be doing that.
Flip my hair.
In the live chat, we've got Excalic saying first post, and Arthur saying we sure are, and baby Leonardo is watching with me. He says hello.
Aww. Baby Leonardo da Vinci or something. Kepler. De Kepler. It means of Kepler.
So for a little bit more on, and I talked about this in last week's episode, since about the time Aaron left the show, I have been thinking about what to do with the future of the show. And this is 350 seemed like a good round point, roughly 8 years in. If there's a time to call it quits, that'd be a decent time to do it. And I gave it lots of thought.
Surprise, he's calling it quits?
No.
Oh, okay.
We gave it a lot of thought. We talked about it a lot. And I even looked at it as...
Not spoiler alert.
As, right now, I just got a raise at work. And it's not huge, but it's actually...
He's essential.
It's an 11% raise. So that's not insignificant.
Yeah, that's...
And if there was ever going to be a time to take a risk on losing patronage, coinciding it with a raise would make it so we wouldn't notice the difference. So
coinciding it with the pandemic when the numbers are falling anyway.
Right, yeah.
It won't hurt. It won't hurt.
Podcasters are putting out content like crazy and nobody's listening right now. So
it's so sad.
Yeah. So it's all good. And what I ended up deciding on was... No, I'm going to make the changes I'm going to make and not kill the show and start something new. This is my show. I can do whatever the hell I want with it, and that includes making the changes that I want to make with it.
It's my show, and I'll...
Sound about right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
Hasn't stopped you in the past, has it?
No, it hasn't. And so things that are changing is I will take breaks when I need to. Holidays, summertime...
Like when you have diseases...
When I'm ill, I won't try and force myself through pneumonia to get an episode out. I'm going to stop doing that. The episodes are going to usually be shorter. Most of them will probably be about a half hour. And they won't necessarily follow a strict schedule. So some weeks there'll be more than one episode. Some weeks there'll be less. Some episodes will basically be a longer standalone Dustin Off the Degree. Some episodes will be news rants. Some will be discussions with people. Some will be interviews. Some will just be digging into other topics. And this will allow some flexibility to be able to better put out content that is timely when I need to get out something timely in a way that doesn't impact the family as much. And also cut down on pressure on Lauren to be on microphone.
Yeah, because as awesome as I am, I'm really not up for it sometimes. Like right now, yeah. I am on Benadryl right now. I took that about a half hour ago before I thought about this. That was dumb, but I'm going to hang in there. Might get some slurred speech, which would be hilarious. But major allergy season is hitting right now. And I tried to put on makeup because we're just doing the live stream. I had my makeup all on. Nope. Teary eyes, mascara running down face. It was a disaster. So I don't look pretty, but that's okay. Yeah. Because my fabulous curly hair will cover up my not prettiness. Curly.
Well, Lauren, you look lovely.
Thank you. It's called the curly girl method.
And we have a 2-year-old, which makes everything difficult. A 2-year-old in a 2-bedroom duplex can make things difficult.
A little.
Arthur says that Lauren needs a beer.
Oh, I don't drink. I can't do alcohol. It upsets my tum-tum. But I do have the doctor, so I'm good there.
And also beer with Benadryl. Lauren's a lightweight. She'd be asleep.
I am beyond lightweight. Because of the medication I've been on for 20 plus years, I can't tolerate alcohol at all. Now, technically, I'm almost off of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. I was off of it for about a week, and then we decided that was not gonna float the boat. So went back on 50 milligrams of Zoloft, and I seem to be doing pretty damn well, actually.
Yeah. Now it's just allergies. Always something.
Yep, waiting for COVID to hit me. Or, as I like to, Corvid. I'm just expecting some crows to 19 crows to dive bomb me at any moment. Corvid, look it up.
Yeah, Arthur, we can't toke things in Idaho. Yeah.
It's true.
Not allowed. But yeah, it's just gonna be more flexible. There will be more solo episodes, but it won't all be solo. There'll be more variety, and with doing one-offs, I will be able to do some of these one-offs in advance when I have better time available, and it'll make it easier to have stuff sitting there ready to go.
Plus, one benefit of quarantine is that we're not going to be out every single weekend, so the stress that Dustin had to get an episode out every single week will be greatly diminished.
Yeah, especially with having a second podcast. Which I really do enjoy doing, but it is also work. And last week we talked about my story, and when we stopped recording midway through for me to go through Kylie's bedtime routine with her,
and because Lauren was exhausted and done, as he could tell from the volume of my voice towards the end of the interview, I'm like, so are you?
Well, the listeners can't tell your volume of your voice because I boosted that.
Okay, but you did.
You got quiet enough that there were some points where I was hitting your microphone as loud as you were.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
But Lauren yelled at me while I was brushing Kylie's teeth about needing to cover and not yelling as in angry yelling, but yelling as in
reminder
from a different room, a reminder to talk about the actual specific doubts that got me out of the church.
Because you mentioned 3 specific doubts, and then we didn't expand upon those.
Right. So we are going to revisit that now. So Dustin's story, part 2.
You interrupted my
Oh, sorry.
My cutaway.
So the first one that really hit was third quarter of my freshman year. I was doing astronomy. I had taken biology, chemistry, physics, and anatomy and physiology in high school. So I figured in college, I might as well do a science that's something different.
Yeah, that's a great idea. If I was a
science major, I would have done, one of those again, but I wasn't. So I did.
This is just for fun.
Just something different. And astronomy seemed like a good one for that.
Excellent.
And so I got into astronomy and found out that even at an Adventist university, they were teaching that the universe is 13.3 to 7 billion years old. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old.
You get beyond Earth's atmosphere, and a lot of the Bible starts to really fall apart quick.
And
you don't even have to go that far. But
they tried their best to reconcile a recent literal 6-day creation with a 4.5 billion year old Earth.
Why did they even bother?
Because Adventist doctrine disintegrates if you don't.
Mm-hmm.
It is not compatible with reality, which is really tough
there we go.
For a religious organization that promotes education so much.
Non-compatibility. That's just religion in a nutshell.
Yeah, so I really struggled with because up to that point, I had literally believed that the Earth was, the universe was created, more or less. Okay, the Earth was created 6-ish thousand years ago, and that the universe was a little bit older, but not
billions,
not necessarily billions,
or just like time hadn't been created yet, so it was an indeterminate amount of.
Yeah, and the Earth is void and without form doesn't quite fit with the Earth coalescing into a rocky planet 4.5 billion years ago. That doesn't quite jive all that well.
Almost does.
Yeah.
And you know that this is all about stretching to make it sound good.
Arthur just commented in, which is why so many send their kids to Southern. Heretic WWU. Yeah. Yep. And why the Oregon Conference prefers to recruit pastors from Southern, not Walla Walla. Same reason. But so then I tried to reconcile that, and I eventually did. That the sun was already there, so I didn't quite go to the point of there was metaphorical parts of it, but at least worked out a way of, these were ancient primitive people trying to make understanding of the world, and they had a few details not quite right.
So you had to stray from the literal...
From completely literal to almost completely literal. I gave an inch.
Okay.
Yeah.
What happens when you give an inch? Ba-doom.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then that satisfied that. Sophomore year, classes started getting more into, started getting a little bit deeper. Theology majors at Walla Walla actually have one of the heaviest majors credit-wise. By the time you include cognates, it's on par with most of the engineering programs, or at least pretty close to what the engineering programs have. And a big part of that is because of how many classes they've moved to cognates, because they didn't want people not graduating because they couldn't get a B in Greek.
So what is a cognate?
Cognate's something that's required for your major, but it doesn't count towards your major.
What?
So prerequisite math for a science degree. You don't, your calculus class doesn't count towards a biology degree, but you have to get the math credit to get the biology degree.
Yep.
So it's like that.
Yep.
But so as we were digging deeper, we were starting to get into classes that were talking about how the Bible is valid. How is it a reliable source of truth?
Womp womp.
And the only good argument for that is the Bible is a reliable source of truth because the Bible says it's a reliable source of truth. And the Bible is the infallible word of God because the Bible says it's the infallible word of God.
There you go.
And then you know in your heart that that's true because God impresses on you that is right.
Yeah.
So you know it's true and a reliable source of information because of feelings.
All the feels.
You get that warm fuzzy, or as the Mormons would call it, what is it, a burning in your bones?
Ooh, I have no idea.
There's all kinds of these weird
Mary
burning,
about that one.
Burning in your bones. I've heard, and I think I heard one professor refer to it as all kinds of burning stuff. Religious people like to talk about burning a lot.
They should probably see a doctor for that. The doctor is in.
And then it was, and even I think at that point, early on, I was starting to have issues with the concept of salvation. And Arthur just commented, kind of like the Quran. Yes, lots of burning in the Quran as well. And it is true because it says it is true. And if you have a feeling that it is true, then therefore it is true. Conceivably, you could have the same thing.
I think therefore I am.
Conceivably, you could have the same thing with Harry Potter or Star Wars.
Dune.
Or Dune, yeah.
Yeah, spice.
And I started to have some issues around salvation as well. Early on, it was pretty vague. By my senior year of college, I was taking systematic theology and started reading up on the doctrine of salvation. I actually read ahead in the textbook, which...
Because you were that kind of kid.
No, because I had serious questions and the textbook had a chapter that dealt with it.
Oh, okay.
So I jumped ahead and I read the doctrine of salvation chapter. Soteriology is the proper academic
Soteriology?
term. Soteriology.
Oh, not satire. Okay.
No. Soter as in the Greek word for savior.
Cool.
Yeah. So I read up on that and read through the different models of salvation because there are 4 main schools of thought on which is the correct doctrine of salvation. There is the sacrificial atonement model, which is sin requires a blood sacrifice, and Jesus' death was the blood sacrifice to pay for that sin. And my objection to that one was he didn't stay dead. It's not a blood sacrifice if you're resurrected.
Well, maybe it is.
That's torture. The wages of sin are death, not torture. If you go through pain and agony to the point of death, but you don't stay dead, like if you're just mostly dead, Wesley in The Princess Bride would not have saved anybody from their sins. He was only mostly dead, and he came back, and yes, he went through crazy torture, but it didn't change anything. So there's that model. It's also based on Iron Age and Bronze Age barbarism. There's the governmental model was the other one that really caught my attention. It's the one I kind of preferred. That model was that to maintain law and order in the universe, God had to make an example for the universe by some humans not being saved, but creating a way for some humans to be saved. And that required killing his son, but not keeping him dead, because it was really just to satisfy there was a legal loophole there available to bring him back. There was a couple other models. There's one that's really
none of it makes sense. I mean, I don't know why I'm trying to wrap my mind around it.
The other ones are even more hogwash than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like literally just...
I like the psych, you're alive again.
Yeah. None of those set well with me, but the governmental model at least seemed plausible enough that I could...
Cognitive dissonance was...
I could live with it. It took me a few months to actually settle on that, though. And if I had been honest in those several months, I think it was about 4 months, during my senior year as a theology major, I would have not said I was a Christian. But that would have required being honest, which was something I couldn't do at that time on that topic. And these all kept coming back. They've already come back several times. By the time I got to the seminary, I was able to take classes that specifically dealt with each and every one of these. So I took, and actually they were all mandatory classes for the Master of Divinity program, not even elective. So I took Issues and Origins was the name of the class. And it was a class that was co-taught by a theology professor and biology professor. And the objective of the class was to convince you that evolution isn't true, while giving you enough knowledge to not be surprised if anybody tried to argue that it was.
Okay.
The conclusion I came to at the end of the class is that evolution is fact and creationism is bullshit.
Yep.
The only coherent argument they made in the entire class was salvation in the Bible is a restoration. And if you don't start with perfection, there is no perfection to restore humanity to. In other words, Christianity is bullshit. Their best argument was, if evolution is true, Christianity is bullshit. And it was fascinating that day during class. So there was like 150 of us in the class looking around at people's faces and seeing the ones who were like, yeah, Christianity, evolution's bad, Christianity's good. And the ones who are like, oh shit, what the hell am I doing here?
Life crisis.
There was quite a few of us in that boat.
They should have therapy dogs for like those kind of discussions. It's like, okay, that's the end of the lecture. Golden Retriever will be out in the hallway for those of you who had mind-shattering existential crises.
Yeah.
Because puppies make everything better.
So at that point, I accepted as fact in reality that evolution was true and creationism was bullshit, while also simultaneously rejecting evolution because I needed to. It also, coincidentally, that semester I took a class on Egyptology, and we got extra credit. You don't get extra credit in grad school very often. This was a class where we actually had an opportunity to get extra credit, and that was to go to the King Tut exhibit at the Field Museum in Chicago, which was 100 miles away. So we went to the Field Museum, and one of the exhibits they had was our evolving Earth. And for the first time since Bill Nye the Science Guy, I actually got a honest, good representation of evolution. And walking through that, it was like, oh, yeah, this does all actually make perfect sense.
And that was at Egyptology?
That was for Egyptology. Well, the King Tut exhibit, getting to see some stuff from and exhibits about ancient Egypt.
They're going to have one here, but unfortunately, the Discovery Center is closed.
Yeah.
So...
and Arthur says that something happened to him in regards to evolution, or same thing happened to him in regards to evolution. While he was a student missionary in Russia, realizing that his side of the argument was bullshit.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
When you have to keep saying it because it's your job, and you're like, I agree with you, dude, but I have to say it. I have to say you're wrong. I don't agree with it, but you're wrong, quotation marks.
And I had a class that same semester on the authority of Scripture and whether it's the literal inerrant Word of God or it's the inspired Word of God. And what was really funny was I'd had almost the exact same class at Walla Walla. And in Walla Walla, it was called Inspiration and Revelation. And at Andrews, it was called Revelation and Inspiration.
Ugh. Okay.
And the professors were on opposite sides of the argument, hated each other's guts. One of the textbooks for the class at Andrews was actually a direct response to a book written by my professor at Walla Walla.
Like a direct rebuttal?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
The Walla Walla perspective was...
Did they steal each other's mascots?
The Walla Walla perspective was that it wasn't word for word inspired by God. It was inspired people writing down messages.
Therefore, you get the fallibility of man.
So it's not completely infallible text, but the message is infallible.
Okay.
But not word for word, detail for detail, which is a much more tenable position.
I like that.
Than the one we had at Andrews, which was... Yes, it is word for word. Literally, God was inspiring every single letter and guiding the hands of the scribes later on who were copying.
Yeah, but weren't you also learning about how the Bible changed over time?
Copying errors. Yeah, when you look at the copying errors, if that's what you're referring to.
I mean,
or the books that were getting included or not included. It's I don't think it'd be fair to say the Bible was changing over time because, yes, there were copying errors that happened as manuscripts were getting copied. Where
was your God then?
Modern translations use a lot broader spread of manuscripts than the older translations. So a modern translation is going to be much more accurate to the original text than King James, which was dealing with mostly medieval copies. We did learn about that. We also did, that wasn't a big deal because the message was preserved, even though there are cases where you can actually find copying errors that got added into the text, like notes on the margins that got added into the text. John 11 came in that way.
Oh.
The last chapter of Mark came in that way.
There were somebody's notes and then somebody's just not paid attention. Okay.
Josephus has a reference to Jesus in it. That was a note somebody wrote in the margin that later got copied in.
Oops.
Scribes copied everything. They uncritically copied every single word. At least the good scribes did. And so for that class, I had to write a paper, and especially grad school, you write lots of papers. That one, I did a paper on how to try to justify an argument for the validity of Scripture to a secular person in the Northwestern United States.
That's awfully specific.
Yeah. I was from Oregon and planning on going back to Oregon. So I was trying to write it for how could I try to convert the unreached peoples back home.
Okay.
Also, how can I make sense of this for myself? Because this is what I needed for myself.
Yeah.
And the conclusion I got was, you can't.
Womp womp.
I wrote it a little bit nicer than that, but like I put in some ideas on some tactics that could be tried, but even acknowledged in it that they're not likely to be effective.
Yeah.
So
did you do any specific tailoring for like people in the Northwest, or was that just a generic my hometown kind of thing?
It was
like what would change an argument from the Northwest versus the Midwest?
It was basically like in my mind, I was picturing a kind of the spiritual but not religious Portland or Seattle.
Okay.
Spiritual but not religious geek, basically.
Okay.
Was my kind of my target on that. And
I figured it was also a grad paper, and grad papers have to be super specific.
Yeah.
Because everybody's written about everything already.
Right. Like I had one class where to do an original paper, and I actually managed to not find that anybody else had written or at least published anything on this. It was on the development of the personhood of the Holy Spirit as Adventism was gradually moving towards Trinitarianism in the 1890s.
Oof.
So like it was specific to a decade, finding texts where people were writing about it because nobody wrote anything about it prior. So I had this like 10-year window with a couple of texts, and yeah. That
all right, way to go.
Managed to pull off like 15 pages on that. And then the final one was Doctrine of Salvation, and actually had a class my second semester in the seminary called Doctrine of Salvation, where we got to work through that all again. And instead of it being 2 weeks in my systematic theology class in my undergrad, it was an entire semester on the one doctrine.
Ugh.
And again, none of it makes any goddamn sense. Every single model to explain the Christian doctrine of salvation is bullshit. And my big hang up on that was, if sin requires a price, you can't cancel the check.
So Jesus was a cheat.
Yeah.
And you couldn't get over that.
It was a cheat. It was a hack. Any God who could would condemn people to death for crimes and would accept a cheat, then wouldn't purgatory make more sense that the Catholics have?
Yeah.
Or wouldn't just letting people die?
Nope. You got to burn in hell for all of time.
Adventists don't have an eternal hell.
Oh, okay. Because that's a whole other level of bullshit.
That's actually also not really found in the Bible. It just like the whole thing is just, it's based on ancient pagan animal sacrifice tied in with this. And you actually get a little bit of this from the Quran. God won't let a good man die. So Jesus wasn't actually killed, according to the Quran. God took him from the cross and hid him away, and then took him up to heaven, because God wouldn't allow somebody that good to die.
But I thought the whole point was that he wasn't that good because he was still human.
No. If he wasn't perfect, then the whole taking on the sins of the entire world doesn't work, because he'd have to pay for his own sins. So he had to be perfect.
Okay.
By definition, for any of this concept to work, he had to be perfect. And yet, but the check was canceled before it was cashed. Hey, Dustin, coming in here from post-production. I just want to also mention that, one of the basic features of ancient paganism, which would include ancient Judaism, was that sacrifices were how you bribe gods into doing what you want. Jesus' death on the cross makes perfect sense in that kind of a mindset. Oh yeah, it's a hack, it's a cheat, it's just trying to get the god to do what you want the god to do. It would make perfect sense in the minds of somebody living in the ancient Roman Empire. It doesn't make sense now. Anyway, back to what we recorded from the live stream. That ended up being a serious issue for me, especially once you add in that there is no reason external to the Bible to justify the Bible being any more valid than the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita.
Oh yeah,
or Tao Te Ching. And by that time, I had read the Quran and the Tao Te Ching, and I don't think I read the Bhagavad Gita. No, I didn't read the Bhagavad Gita, but the Tao Te Ching and the Quran, I did both. There's no external justification for any one of them being correct and the other one's not. And there is no way to argue that evolution isn't true. No good argument for it.
I love going, there's a review for, because I got off on looking at 1-star reviews for national parks, and a great one was for the Grand Canyon, I think. This guy was confused. He's like, how could they say that this was developed over millions of years when the Earth was only 10,000 years old? It's like, universal head slap. It's like, no. It's like, you're right. How do you justify that, sir?
Yeah. Arthur commented that while he had a militant anti-Trinitarian Adventist neighbor, he was kind of bizarre and very passionate about his pet belief. I did run into a few anti-Trinitarian Adventists. Had a classmate in the theology program who was anti-Trinitarian. And honestly, I believe anti-Trinitarian Adventism makes more sense than Trinitarian Adventism does. Trinitarianism is bizarre and one of the strangest concepts that late classical Christianity developed.
Was it just a way to make them more mainstream?
No.
It came separate from that?
Yep. And it ended up getting strong enough to create the schism that I am doing a podcast about. And it's taking a lot of time to get through all the details to get to the point where we can actually talk about the development of Trinitarian theology, to get to the point in why incredibly minuscule difference resulted in splitting the church.
Yeah.
And so anyway, yeah, these doubts, I couldn't get rid of them for long. And like, I didn't quit the seminary after the first semester because of not wanting to drive across Wyoming in the dead of winter. I didn't quit the seminary after the second semester because I talked to my roommate about it, and after talking to him, I wasn't quite ready yet to accept that my sense of calling was a delusion.
So so some feeling still brought you there. You can't deny that. Or you couldn't at the time. So you might as well give it another semester, give it another try.
Yeah. And try getting out of the classroom, go to Jordan on an archaeological dig, go to Mexico to preach an evangelistic series, get out of the classroom, get out of the country, see the world, talk to people.
That was probably the best advice that was ever given to you.
Nobody advised it.
Oh, that wasn't your roommate advice?
Nope.
Oh, that was your...
The best advice I got...
Sure did cost you a lot of money, but totally worth it.
Yeah. The advice I'd gotten aside from that was switch to a master's program, Masters of Arts program, so that I could slow down and focus more on I just blanked.
Masters of Art?
Master of Arts degree, MA. And man, my brain keeps getting stuck on eschatology. That's not the right word. How we know things. Oh, that frustrates me that I forgot that word.
Okay, well, how you know things.
Yeah. That advice was stupid because that would have been way more expensive and slower and gotten me out with a degree that does not get you a job anywhere at all. So, yeah.
Well, you have a liberal arts degree. Would you like fries with that?
Yeah. I kept reworking through those. I got out. I got to think about it a lot while I was traveling around Jordan and digging. I got to think about it a lot while I was preaching in Mexico. And yeah, I wasn't an atheist when I left Mexico. That still took a few more months. But at that time, all I had left was a pretty small God of the Gaps.
Yeah.
Epistemology. Yes. Thank you, Arthur. Oh man, that was bothering me.
Thank you, Arthur. That saved us a lot of grief.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the story on those doubts.
All right. Yeah. I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there who have those exact same problems. And that's why you have to find local secular groups to talk this out of. Because, man, if you're going through this, you're not doing it alone.
Yeah.
Although I bet it feels like you are.
Well, when you're a believer, you don't want to reach out to a atheist group because you're not an atheist.
No. But you can't reach out to your religious group either because they'll shame you into or stone you or I don't know. What do religious people do to the people they hate nowadays?
It was difficult to find people to talk to. I did find 2 professors that I took classes from at the seminary who described at various points in classes going through stuff I could relate to, struggling with doubt. And so I got private meetings with each of them to ask them about how they worked through it.
Were they the ones that pretty much admitted that they didn't?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In both cases, they admitted to they like the community.
Yeah, they don't want to give that up. They have nice jobs. They've got friends, family. Fake it till you make it.
And one of them travels around the country arguing against evolution when he doesn't actually believe in creationism or even believe in Christianity. He's an atheist pretending to be a conservative Adventist, and that is disgusting.
That's pretty awful.
It's one thing if you're just sitting in the pew, keeping your mouth shut. It's very different if you are promoting ideas that you don't believe in.
Yeah, all over.
That's why I couldn't keep preaching in Mexico. Like I'd made a promise to myself after I preached one sermon where I tried to preach the party line, something I didn't necessarily agree with, to never do that again. And I did a good job of never doing that again until I had these canned sermons that I couldn't stray from. And that sucked.
Yeah.
I did not like that. One thing that was interesting, though, was for several years after that, when people would ask me how I ended up an atheist, if I actually told them the story, they would try to argue these 3 points. Yes, those were the 3 things that got me out of the church. They're irrelevant now.
Yeah, you're so far beyond that now.
Yeah. And even, 2 years later, they were completely irrelevant because I was way past that.
They were your gateway.
Uh-huh.
Gateway drugs.
All right. Let's talk about a little bit of news.
All right.
So,
I like my version better.
We are going to talk a little bit about COVID-19 because that is the news.
Yep.
Last week, I talked about the only non-COVID-19 news that's been in the news.
That was the earthquake, right?
Well, Idaho's anti-trans bills.
Ugh.
Yeah. So
I like to call them lawsuits in waiting.
Yeah. American Atheists is handling this all correctly. They are postponing the 2020 National Convention that was supposed to take place Easter weekend in Phoenix, Arizona, 1 year.
Okay.
So it will be Easter weekend in Phoenix, Arizona in 2021.
Why Phoenix? Okay.
They travel around picking different places, and Phoenix is
Phoenix won. Yep.
Yeah. And it has a major airport. Boise will never get it because it doesn't have a major airport.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah. So good job. Granted, if they hadn't announced that when they did, they would have been forced to anyway.
Yeah, true. I mean, not to be disingenuous, but you didn't really have a choice.
Pastor Rodney Howard Brown, who's a Florida man.
Florida man. Which is a great podcast, by the way. Check them out.
He has ignored Tampa Bay. That's where he's from, Tampa. His church is River at Tampa Bay Church, and he ignored orders to stop having meetings for groups larger than 10. Florida had not yet...
Church services included.
Yes.
Not exempted.
Florida had not yet issued a stay-at-home order, but they had prohibited meetings of groups greater than 10, and Pastor Howard Brown continued to hold meetings for packed church services. And to be classified as a megachurch requires at least 1,000 people in routine attendance. Many of them, especially in larger cities, are tens of thousands of people packed into tight spaces. And after several violations, he was arrested. He actually turned himself in.
Well, yeah, he probably felt terrible. I mean, this is only partially his fault. Yeah, of course he's going to keep going because this is what he does. But the people who went, those thousands of people that actually packed the churches, they're the ones that should also, well, ultimately do get punished.
Yeah.
And because that, you guys don't do that.
Especially when you consider that and especially in white churches, most people attending also have white hair.
Yeah, they're old.
Which means they're high risk.
Yep.
And
but whatever. Faith is more important than the physical body.
The sheriff who arrested him, he and his command staff had met with leaders from this church several times, begging them to stop. And when they didn't, they got a warrant for his arrest.
All right, good for that's a hard call to make.
And the sheriff's statement on this was, quote, "Shame on this pastor, their legal staff, and the leaders of this staff for forcing us to do our job. That's not what we wanted to do during a declared state of emergency. We are hopeful that this will be a wake-up call."
Maybe in some states.
And his legal counsel is the Liberty Council.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Way to mar the word liberty. No, they're just bad news all over. And of course, everybody's claiming First Amendment rights are being revoked. Defy it by going to church.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what this is about. This is a temporary shutdown of assembly simply because there is a freaking pandemic.
Right. And to make it clear, the goal here is to not overwhelm hospitals. That's
if all those people went to that service and they all got sick at the same time, a bunch of them did, they all have to hit the hospital at the same time, where if they just stayed home, it would have slowly diffused throughout the community versus all at once.
Well, if you look at the statistics across the general population, about 20% of people who get it, and granted, some of this is probably artificially high numbers based on low testing rates, but 20% of confirmed positive cases require hospitalization on average. If you look at people above the age of 60, that's closer to 40%, with more like 10% dying.
Yeah.
So 1,000 people, if they all got it, and this is incredibly contagious, that would be 200 people, or if they're all over the age of 60, more like 400 people all needing to go to the hospital to go to the ICU.
Which has, even a big ICU has 40 beds?
Most big ones are a lot smaller than that.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the biggest that I can think of was...
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're preaching to the choir here on this one, I think. But,
and the other thing that's trying to be avoided with this is that coronavirus doesn't kill people who don't get it. Because if the hospital is completely overloaded with people who have coronavirus and can't breathe, then what happens when you get in a car accident?
Or have an asthma attack because of insanely high pollen.
Yeah.
It's a good thing I have a nebulizer here at home.
Arthur said that his dad says that it's because they don't get any money if people don't come to church. Yeah.
No, they get tons of money.
Now, realistically, these churches should be budgeting off of tithe, and if their members are actually paying tithe, that's based on percentage of income, not how often they attend services. But they all rely on those free will offerings that get put in the basket when it gets passed around.
Not even a basket. Oh, God. Can you imagine how dirty that money is? Yeah. And not even like a basket. These guys have online websites that you can donate money directly to the church for.
Oh, so, but no, it's that the offering basket is a big deal. And churches who stop doing that and like go to a box at the door or online donations lose a lot of money. Because
the pressure to give money when your neighbors are sitting right there next to you.
You have to put something in.
Buttons.
Even if it's just $1, you
raffle
have to
ticket.
Put something in.
Dust.
In Louisiana, Baton Rouge pastor Tony Spell of Life Tabernacle Church has received a misdemeanor summons for 6 counts of violating the governor's executive order barring large gatherings.
Okay, so he's done this multiple.
6
at least
times.
6 times. Okay.
And you know what his response to it was on that?
What?
He'll be continuing to this Sunday.
Yep.
They didn't arrest him. They issued him a summons to appear in court. They need to put him behind bars.
Yep.
because he will continue to do this. Now, there are lots of churches out there who have complied with the orders and closed their doors, and a lot of them are doing live streams, kind of like we're doing now. It's not that hard to do.
No, it really isn't. You don't need 100 people in a room to make a sermon. You just need one person with a microphone
Mm-hmm. Or heck,
who like to hear their own voices.
You can even just take your cell phone and hold it up in front of your face and talk to that.
Absolutely.
It's really not hard to do. But even churches that are following the rules and shutting down are not immune to causing problems. A Russian language church, the Bethany Slavic Missionary Church in Sacramento, California, is responsible for 1/3 of all COVID-19 cases in that county.
Oh, wow.
With more than 70 confirmed positive cases at this time.
Oh, that sucks.
And they shut down in mid-March.
Oh, just too little too late, or?
They kept having small group Bible studies in people's houses. And pastoral visits. Yeah.
Oh, man.
So you just have everybody visit everybody going around in a circle, and before long, everybody's gonna get it.
Yeah. It's like I'm sure New York is having problems with Hasidic Jews.
Mm-hmm.
Missionaries that are out in the field who aren't stopping, who are going door to door.
Yep.
Whew. That's no good.
You know, it's one thing with, and I guess we'll get to this one. It applies with all this. They all say that what they're doing is essential. And they think that's at least as essential as the pizza delivery. Except you will die if you don't eat. So making sure that people have access to food keeps people alive.
Not healthy necessarily, but alive.
Right, alive. And going to church increases exposure risk. By consolidating people into tight spaces for several hours where they will spread infectious diseases, where this is actively happening. So it is not a corollary at all.
Also, it is probably a little irresponsible to be ordering delivery fast food right now. I say as our Domino's pizza box is sitting in the trash bin, and it was delicious.
We did contactless delivery.
We set out a little tray for him to drop the pizza off on. It was nice.
The same tray that in the video you can see that has my Chromebook on it. We had that out in front of the door and paid by credit card online, and he just dropped it off right there. Yeah. We almost lost the contactless thing thanks to Kylie running for the door and opening it, and I had to stop her before she opened the screen door.
She is by far our biggest leak.
Yeah.
Take her, walk around the block, walk by a person, and she will try to pet their dog, say hi. I have to grab her. It's just a mess. The other person, she ran up to the person to pet their dog, and the lady handed her her leash.
What?
And Kylie walked little Coco around for a little bit, and I'm just like, no, God, no, you're not supposed to do that. So I keep trying to tell her, okay, don't touch. And I am shocked at how hard it is to keep a 2-year-old, because you're always trying to hurry them up or slow them down. For them to escape is so easy. I got to put her on a leash.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah.
Venting. Sorry.
This is a safe space, Lauren.
Yeah.
Publicly out there on the internet.
Fucking 2-year-olds. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, because how do you explain social distancing to a 2-year-old?
How do you... Yeah.
I tried with her little toy farm animals, and that idea was...
right over her head.
Didn't work. Yeah, I tried and failed, and telling her, no, you can't pet those dogs. Explaining why is... she can't grasp that concept at this point.
So I just keep saying basically because you can't. And that doesn't work all the time, especially when the other people are okay with her petting their dogs and they encourage it. Yeah. Then it's just a no starter. Telling her she can't go on the slide at the playground because it's covered in caution tape because some stupid woman with her anti-vax kid is probably playing all over it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's hard. Not being able to play with the little girl next door. Oh, man, it's hard. I feel I feel it for everybody with little kids who can't understand.
Yeah. So we've talked about...
Oh, also, really good idea for Halloween costumes, Bubble Boy.
So we talked about a sheriff who did the right thing.
Yep.
Handled everything very well. We talked about one who, well, vaguely covered one who has kind of sort of half-assed it. And now we have one who...
Straight up.
I take back every nice thing I've said about Northern Idaho.
Yeah, a lot of people say, well, at least it's Coeur d'Alene, but no, man.
First up, we have Sheriff Darryl Wheeler.
Cheryl.
He is the county sheriff for Bonner County. If you want to get a feel for where Bonner County is, up in the very, very northern part of Idaho, in the Panhandle that's only 90 miles wide. Right on the Canadian border is Boundary County. Right below that is Bonner County. So it's almost in Canada.
A lot of skinheads.
Yeah. Yes, the Aryan Nation's national headquarters moved out.
Doesn't mean the white supremacists did.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. He wrote a letter to Idaho Governor Brad Little saying, "Dear Governor Little, there is a letter circulating around the nation in response to the COVID-19 crisis written by businessman Alfie Oakes." By a businessman, not a scientist, not a doctor, not an epidemiologist. No, a businessman. Back to his letter. It brings up and questions many important points. 1, the reliability of the information disseminated by the World Health Organization. 2, our response to that information. 3, the cause and effect devastation caused by our response. And 4, our responsibility to change course. In the spirit of changing course, I'm urging you to call up the full Idaho legislature and assemble them for an emergency meeting in Boise to discuss these points. In other words, set up a meeting of more than 10 people.
To talk about this thing that they've already talked about and decided on.
Okay, back to his letter. I do not believe that suspending the Constitution was wise because COVID-19 is nothing like the plague. We were misled by some public health officials. Now it is time to reinstate our Constitution. On Tuesday, here is where we get to the point. On Tuesday, Texas Governor Greg Abbott changed his state's course by signing an executive order giving churches back their right to assemble. In the spirit of liberty and Constitution, you can request those that are sick to stay home, but at the same time, you must release the rest of us to go on with our normal business.
And that's what it's all about, is business. People are losing money.
No, this one's about churches.
Well, I know, but it's always... Yeah, it's about churches, but it's being the people who keep circling this stuff. They're all business people.
Yeah,
who are losing money. This Constitution has not been suspended.
Nope. The First Amendment still stands.
Yeah,
you just can't have gatherings
of any kind. And if you exempt churches, that means that you're giving churches special privilege.
Yep, which is less constitutional.
Very.
However, it is a fucking emergency.
It's not the plague. Well,
it's starting to look like it.
That's what... Pandemic is another word for plague, by the way. It's not the Black Plague. No, we've got that one pretty much under control. A couple of gophers. But no, this is bad. And this guy is being incredibly irresponsible.
Yeah.
But that's what happens when you elect anti-government people into government positions. Mm-hmm. They are anti-government. They don't want to listen to you when you say, don't do that. They'll take your money, but they won't listen to you.
So, oh man, yeah. And his big thing is he
just wants to go back to church.
He wants churches to be able to assemble. They're suspending the Constitution by not allowing free assembly or free practice of exercise of religion.
Tell your pastor to do it online. Live stream it. There you go. Problem solved.
And one thing that is important to note, though, is the Constitution applies to the federal government. Some of the Constitution applies to the states. Some applies to the states always. Some applies to the states sometimes. And it can all be suspended in an emergency.
Of course, that's how a lot of people end up in power who shouldn't have it. And that is something you have to, keep an eye out for. It's really easy to shut everything down in an emergency and then just keep it going.
Oh, yeah. Tons of dictatorships start with emergencies that are actual emergencies. Some start with emergencies that are the creation of the would-be dictator.
Yeah.
And that state of emergency just never ends. And so they just continue to exercise emergency power forever. That's not what's happening here.
Not yet.
And if it doesn't end when the emergency ends, then we have an issue.
Yeah. So, don't jump the gun on this one.
Yeah. And he's not alone in northern Idaho.
No, we got more.
So next we have Tim Remington. He is an Idaho state representative from Coeur d'Alene and a pastor.
He was shot in the head, last year, I believe?
Oh, really?
Yeah. This guy has enemies. I don't know I can't remember what he did, but he has recovered from a gunshot wound.
Last Sunday, which as of recording would be...
Not relevant, but interesting.
The Sunday before last Sunday, as of the release on the main feed, he had 125 people attend his church service over 2 services. So attendance would have been down, probably. But yeah, he is not complying with the stay-at-home order. He is not complying with the orders to not have gatherings. And he's a member of the state legislature.
And he replaced a guy who got busted for, federal money fraud issues. So they got rid of one baddie and got this guy, probably because he's a pastor, and then he pulls this stunt.
Yep.
Oops. No.
So then we've got
No.
Darryl Wheeler, and then... our favorite, Heather Scott.
Oh, God. Blech.
Idaho State Representative. She wrote, "It's not the role of government to be picking and choosing which businesses are essential and which ones are not. Because what has happened is they have just showed everybody in this nation how because of a flu, they can completely take away all your First Amendment rights, the right to assemble, and everything that belongs to that. No, this is... not a flu. It is a virus that nobody has any immunity to. The best comparisons to this actually isn't 1918 influenza pandemic. I think a better comparison is the bubonic plague or
pox,
the Columbian Exchange.
Yeah, pox.
Smallpox was something that the native inhabitants of the Americas had no immunity to. So when they were exposed to it, it killed off a whole lot of them.
And you'd think that these guys would be more concerned about their constituents who are dying at higher rates because of this disease than anything else, than, other things. But they don't care.
Yeah.
Which is funny, because these are the people who voted them in.
Yeah, yeah. And you would think conservatives whose base is religious fundamentalists and old people would want to keep their base alive.
Yeah, this isn't like my original assumption that it was all 80-year-olds who were dying. More the testing is so screwed up anyway. But it is hitting younger people. It is a concern for everybody. And it has been shown that the states or areas that do complete lockdown suffer less than those who remain open longer.
Yeah.
So with those stats in, if you insist on keeping things open and running as long as possible, you're officially part of the baddies.
And even now, if you want to get tested, at least here in Boise, you have to have symptoms of COVID-19 and be in a high-risk group.
Whoop, whoop. Asthmatics unite.
We have at least reached the point that you don't have to be getting admitted to the hospital to get tested, but you still have to be in a high-risk group. Lauren could get tested. I can't.
Except for you're my caregiver.
Maybe.
That's more for people working in nursing homes and stuff.
I think so.
Or elderly parents.
I think so, yeah. I don't think I would qualify to be tested even if I have it.
So, okay, theoretically, if I were to get this and I have asthma and I have lower respiratory problems, I go to the hospital and this thing moves quickly, there's a chance that I may not be able to say goodbye to you.
You wouldn't be able to say goodbye to me.
Wouldn't be able to say goodbye to you, would not be able to see my daughter before I died.
Nope. I would have to drop you off.
This has happened to people.
Yeah. I would have to get you and Kylie in the car to drive you to the hospital to drop you off at the ER.
And hope that you'll see me again.
Neither Kylie nor I would be allowed in. Yeah.
So does that hit home to you guys? I mean,
this is a big deal. And it is hitting young, healthy people. And
anyway, we talked about this enough.
InfoWars. They got kicked out of like several years ago, got kicked out of Apple Podcasts and YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, and the Apple App Store. They did not get kicked out of the Google Play Store for Android until now.
Finally crossed the line, eh?
And you want to guess what that line was?
Calling the pandemic a hoax?
Intentionally spreading... No, they weren't going hoax. They were going with the approach of trying to sell Alex Jones's supplements as treatments or preventatives.
He's selling supplements?
He's got a particular silver beverage.
That is evil.
Yeah.
That is snake oil salesman.
Yep.
He doesn't have any background. He doesn't know people who have backgrounds. Yeah, he needs to go to jail for that.
He's also gotten complaints from several state attorneys general, and has since updated his website to, at least according to 9 to 5 Google, he updated his website to include that these products are not intended to diagnose, treat, or blah, 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 any condition. Yeah.
Wow. Making money off of sick people.
Yep.
Real nice. Of course, that's what the pharmacists are doing, but that's a whole different issue.
Yeah.
It's a capitalist thing that we just...
And Hobby Lobby. So Steve Green, the owner of Hobby Lobby, was going to not shut down his stores for quite a while, and in some cases did shut down his stores in compliance with orders, and then brought them back up because his wife had a vision.
Right, because people convince themselves that dreams are real.
God told her that it was all going to be okay, and they just needed to trust and believe. And so, nope, weren't going to close it because God said they didn't need to. And they violated orders to close.
Those poor employees.
In some cases, they tried to classify their stores as essential, trying to call them hardware stores. Because in most places, hardware stores are allowed because it is considered essential to be able to maintain your home in a safe state.
Especially since so many contractors got furloughed and some people's like bathroom remodels were left half finished.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, suddenly it's springtime and you need to turn on your air conditioning and your system is defunct. Yeah, you don't need to cross stitch or knit or paper mache your way out of a pandemic.
Right.
I mean, I do because I'm ADD up the wazoo, but I wouldn't call it essential.
Right. You could do something else to try to stay sane.
Probably.
But he finally did decide to shut down Hobby Lobby, finally.
Don't shop at Hobby Lobby.
And immediately furloughed all store employees and most of the corporate employees, and took the extra evil standpoint of ending any emergency leave that people are getting paid for, and also prohibiting them from using any paid time off they have accrued.
So furloughed in this case means unpaid.
Furloughed means unpaid.
Right.
But like if I end up getting furloughed from the hospital, I will be able to use up my PTO and even be allowed to take an extra 40 hours beyond that before I stop getting paid. This furloughing that he's doing is, no, you will not be getting a paycheck past this date, period.
Right. He's punishing the employees because he doesn't like what the government's doing to him.
Yeah.
In uplifting news, Pink, the singer star, has recovered from coronavirus 19 and has donated $1 million to the cause.
Yeah, which is pretty awesome.
So, yeah, instead of screwing people over, some people are trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Thanks, peoples.
There are a few.
But yeah, don't ever shop at Hobby Lobby. Come on, guys. It's not worth it. Just go online. If you have to, go online.
All right. We have a upgrading patron. SoJo has raised her patronage.
Thank you.
So thank you, SoJo.
Helps pay for this laptop screen that Dustin just had to fix.
Yeah, the laptop that the live stream is running off of is
It looks good.
It was a hand-me-down from Lauren's mom that Lauren's dad had knocked off a table and it fell and cracked the screen. I think it was like 2 weeks old.
Not even, maybe. Oh, he felt so bad. He was vacuuming and knocked it off. Oh, man.
So they gave it to us, and at that time, there were not any screens available for it. So I finally got around to wanting to actually do that after I found an easier way than the official way to replace it, which required a complete dismantling of the laptop. This is just 3 screws and a couple clips. Well, I did break a couple of the clips, but not only did I replace the screen, I upgraded it to 1080p. It's nice.
Sweet.
We got on the contact form on the website. We got something from somebody named Messenger.
Nice. We won't shoot you.
All right, the comment. Introduction. Be certain of this, that the highest aim of creation and the most important result is belief in God. If I were to print this off, it would be probably...
Copy pasta.
10 pages? I have not read the whole email.
You can't.
It's
and you shouldn't.
Ridiculous.
It's so funny because I don't know who thinks that these kind of emails get through to anybody. If it's longer than 2 paragraphs, you're not going to get read.
Yeah.
Much less having a whole diatribe.
Yeah.
Freaking grad student paper.
We got a comment on
Messenger.
YouTube on episode 236.
Ooh, going back a little ways.
That's a while back, yeah. This was from Rob P. 123451. Hi, Dustin. I just
come
heard
up with a better name than that.
Your mocking of my responses to you and your podcast. No worries, and know that you do not believe this. By the angels of God recorded all that you said, and yes, even the mocking. Time is short, bro. Wake up before that great and dreadful day of the Lord spoken of in Malachi 4:5 come.
Comes on your face.
Yeah, I'm not worried.
Nope.
Yep.
Not gonna stress about it.
Yep. In response to episode...
I'm gonna stress about that squirrel digging in my garden. It's gonna see end of days here pretty soon if it's not careful. But Malachi?
In response to episode 347 from Rich.
Oh, okay.
We got Dustin, hang in there, buddy. We need you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. That was with my infection.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was rough.
It's been a rough couple of months, guys.
And then in response to episode 348, Rich wrote, the Pope issued a secret order that, due to the virus, all priests should temporarily suspend buggering altar boys.
Don't worry, guys. It's just temporary.
Yep.
Just furlough the sodomy for a little bit.
I'm sure that as soon as... Actually, the specific order is... I don't know that it necessarily prohibited having altar boys helping. Because they're still supposed to go through the sacraments. They're just not supposed to hold the public services. So that probably won't stop any priests from buggering altar boys.
No, probably not.
All right. So on that note, Lauren, thank you for powering through on Benadryl.
Yeah. Look at this hair, guys. Look at that. Look at those curls. Freaking springy.
Altar
boy.
Arthur and Leonardo, thank you. And Excalic, thank you as well for watching on the live stream.
Yes, thank you guys. Love. You got some nice cleavage shots there early on. That was good.
And until next week, remember, not all those who wander are lost. Thank you for listening to another episode of Atheist Nomads. You can find show notes and contact information at atheistnomads.com. Follow us on Twitter at Atheist Nomads, and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Atheist Nomads. Please subscribe to the show in iTunes, Stitcher, or your podcatcher of choice, and while you're there, feel free to leave us a review. Theme music is courtesy of Sturdy Fred. Until next time, this has been the Atheist Nomads.